In the last 2 years, Toyota has been the leader in the auto industry in a bad way. There have been two enormous scandals. One last year, they're still recovering from this. Their Hino truck division had been falsifying emissions for years, and that had cost them over $500 million in fines and set them back quite a bit with production as well. This year, an even bigger, more scandalous revealing has just happened. But there is some good news for Toyota before we get into the horrifying news. Toyota breaks annual production record. Get this, from January to November, they produced 9.23 million, an increase of 13.6%. They're on track, at least before the news broke anyways, they were on track to smash a full-on year of production, getting over 10 million vehicles, which I believe they've done before, but they were on track to beat their old record. And of course, that would set them as the number one producing automaker in the world once again. All right, so let's get into the bad news. Toyota subsidiary Daihatsu, they make K cars, they make small cars for other markets as well. We don't get Daihatsu in the United States, so you could say this doesn't affect us, but this is something everyone around the world should know because it's one of the biggest automotive scandals of all time. I'm not kidding. For 30 years, Daihatsu has been cheating on safety measures, and they've been producing unsafe cars for the market in Japan. And 60% of Daihatsu is sold in Japan. They make millions of, I believe they make over 1 million vehicles per year for Toyota, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Here's what Daihatsu had to say about this scandal. The investigation found that there were 174 new cases and 25 test items. In addition to the door trim irregularity in April, so these investigations have been going on for about a year now. But in addition to that, the pole side collision test irregularity in May, so they found more cover-ups just a month after that. And there were irregularities found in 64 models and 3 engines, and the total number of models in production development and discontinued. This is going back essentially 3 decades of faking and working around safety tests in order to produce their vehicles probably cheaper than the competition, while also putting the lives of its occupants and the lives of its customers in danger knowingly. They knowingly did this. Now, does this fall completely on Toyota's plate? And the answer is partially. And the reason is because Daihatsu wasn't a fully owned subsidiary of Toyota until 2016. And Toyota soaked them up, bought them outright. And since 2016, they still, 8 years later, now this is just getting out. Someone in Toyota had to know, I'm assuming, and maybe more it could have been just sweep it under the rug sort of things. I didn't know about this, but it's hard to imagine that Toyota didn't know about this, honestly. This is Toyota we're talking about. It's hard for anything to get past them. They are like the all-seeing eye of Sauron in this case, right? They're not the good guys here. And the models included both Daihatsu brand vehicles and models supplied as OEM models for Toyota. Okay, so these were also Toyota cars. These were also Mazda badged cars, as well as Subaru badged cars in the domestic as well as foreign markets. They deeply apologize to the customers and stakeholders for causing great inconvenience and concern and betraying their trust for their own lives and safety. Not acceptable, Toyota, not acceptable, Daihatsu. Nikkei Asia has some more juicy details here. This could cost them $700 million in losses. Now, all the production has stopped at the Daihatsu factories in Japan. I believe they're still making vehicles in, I think, Malaysia and Indonesia. And I don't know if they're the same models that they're producing in Japan, but maybe the safety regulations aren't as stringent in those Southeastern Asian countries compared to its home market in Japan. But despite that, all the factories, at least in Japan, have been put on halt for now. And with this halt in production, they might not reach that production record for a full 12 months, a full calendar year. Now, Toyota is doing some good. There's some silver linings here, I guess you could say. Since the factories are shut down, Toyota is going to compensate suppliers. This is actually happening in the United States in some ways with electric vehicles like the Ford F-150 Lightning. They just announced that they're reducing production about half, and the suppliers are like, what the F? You told us that you're going to be producing X amount of EVs, and now we hired all these people. We invested in all of these machines and materials in order to produce all these parts for these electric pickup trucks. Now you're saying you're only producing half. So like the suppliers got caught in a really bad situation and are getting caught in bad situations here in the United States with EVs and their uncertainty with the market demand and whatnot. But at least Toyota is compensating its suppliers here due to their own screw up. So there is actually no time for restart for their production facilities in Japan. And that is not good, but they need to be able to fix this. Absolutely. They said most shipments in Indonesia and Malaysia have been resumed, like I said earlier. In addition to compensating suppliers for lost income due to a shut in production, Toyota is also considering support for small dealerships that will be unable to sell new Daihatsu cars. I hope they do this. I hope Toyota helps those small dealerships. Otherwise, people will lose their jobs. But you would think the Japanese customers and longtime supporters of Toyota and Daihatsu and their K cars, you'd think they'd be pretty pissed off about this. Hopefully by compensating the dealers, they can at least keep the fires in check instead of the whole building burning down. And this is likely to cost Daihatsu a profit this year. So they'll be in the red more than likely. And that would be the first in 30 years. But this scandal's been going back 30 years. So now they won't be able to make their cars in theory at as much profitable level because they have to make them better with better structures, doing things the shortcut when it comes to safety, and it's just never going to work out for you. You're eventually going to be caught. Look what happened to Mitsubishi in the 90s, right? Almost killed the brand entirely. Well, their automaking division, not like their banking or, Mitsubishi's an enormous company. Now, is this going to sink Toyota? Well, not really, because Daihatsu only accounts for around 3% of Toyota's operating profit. There's not a lot of profit in mini cars and K cars. So it's not necessarily about money for Toyota in this case. It's about their reputation and betraying the trust of their customers, right? But Toyota, despite what's going on, they're expected to grow 65% this fiscal year with their operating profit to 4.5 trillion yen. And this has, of course, affected them on the stock market. This has sunk them down to a 2.5-month low when this news broke about a week ago. I'm just now getting to it. I don't like talking about the dirty stuff of the industry because I'm fairly certain all manufacturers are cheating in some way, shape, or form. It happens in a high level of sports. So anytime you're playing big time ball, people are going to be cheating, whether it's the Olympic level or here at the high-end automaker level. So I don't think Toyota's the only one cheating. I think most of them are. It's just that how can you cover it up the best? Yeah, it's Toyota's in the spotlight here because no one else is caught cheating at the moment, right? If we look back to Dieselgate, that's one of the most terrible things that's happened to Volkswagen, if not the most terrible thing, because they still haven't recovered here in North America. Now, this scandal is not over because Japan's transport ministry is doing their own investigation. Daihatsu could face other penalties, including a revocation of the certification required for mass production. They might shut their butts down entirely due to this. So if something breaks, I'll definitely follow up with this news story, but this is probably going to be the end of this. It doesn't really affect us here in North America, but if they're doing it at one of their subsidiaries, maybe it could happen here stateside too. So stay tuned for that. Now, I want to talk about this real quick. This is kind of exciting. After the supply chip shortages for the majority of the automakers, right, in 21 and 2022 after the pandemic, it seems like the Japanese automakers never want that to happen ever again, especially with the tensions going around Taiwan with TMSC, the the most advanced chip manufacturer in the world. They produce high-end graphics, they produce high-end microprocessors, but it looks like Toyota, Honda, here we go, Mitsubishi, Mazda, and Subaru, all the big Japanese automakers, they are pooling together with Denso and Panasonic. Okay, we know Panasonic, Denso is the main supplier for Toyota and a lot of other manufacturers. Panasonic also produces tons of batteries, right, as well as electronics such as screens inside of these cars. It would have been cool to see Sony in on this too, because there are other semiconductor companies from Japan in this, but Sony would have been great to see in here as well. Maybe they get in it in the near future, because we know Honda and Sony are working together on electric vehicles. But anyways, what are they doing? Well, they're making a system on a chip. They have a nice little diagram here. This is pretty familiar to me because I have a chiplet design microprocessor in my computer to the right of me. It's a Ryzen 3950X. It's a 16 core. And so it has this, in my computer anyways, it has two 8-core chiplets. It doesn't have any onboard graphics. I have my own graphics card. But in this situation, they are putting on their own graphics, and that's when you have a microprocessor as well as a graphics chip, then that's how they can call it a system on a chip. So you have a full-on computer on this chip that Toyota, Honda, Subaru, Nissan, Mazda, they want to produce their own in order to avoid any sort of microchip situations going on in the future. They want to supply their own high-end, super advanced microchips. This will help perform large-scale arithmetic processing such as drawing and image processing. So this is important for self-driving. It's important for graphics as well on the display. Now, the chiplet design is fairly new in computer manufacturing, going back to the chiplet thing here. And the reason why it's becoming more and more popular is because you don't need to print a huge chip, because when you do that, there's going to be more defects. The chances of defects on that one big chip on the wafer goes up. When you're able to make smaller chips and piece them together like Legos, it's essentially what's going on here. That's why they mentioned the higher yields here. With chiplets, yes, multifunctionality and higher performance. So you can add extra Legos essentially for better performance, whether it's on the graphics or the compute end, because in some applications, there's going to be some dead space here. But on the higher end cars, let's say luxury cars or whatever, that needs to have more processing power, just put another chiplet on there and beef up its power and processing capabilities. This company is called Azra, and they want to have this technology by 2028 and mass produce in vehicles from 2030 onward. By combining Japan's technological capabilities and experience in automotive and electrical components and semiconductors, Azra will work with industry, government, and academia to promote domestic and international collaboration as a world-leading technology research group. So here's the interesting thing, is that this is just the processor, but Toyota is the one producing high-end software that Mazda is going to be using. Subaru is 99% going to use as well. Nissan, who knows what's going to happen with Nissan, their technology, because they're splitting ways with Renault in the financial sense for the most part. As a result, Nissan said they're going to be investing in Renault's Ampere technology for their electric vehicles. And Honda, I think they might be doing their own thing with Sony, but that's just on the software end because they will be using more than likely this hardware. More than likely, we'll see. But I want to end it there. It's a very long video today. A lot of bad news for Toyota, a lot of bad press. You know, they say any press is good press, but I don't think that's the case right here for Toyota. And I'm excited to see what they're able to cook out. I mean, we're 4 to 6 years away from the system on a chip from the big Japanese automakers, and it could revolutionize their technology in their cars, but we'll see. Time will tell. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's content. Make sure you're subscribed for more auto industry news. I'll catch you in the next one, and Happy New Year.